Have you ever thought about the fact that public speaking and rugby are actually very similar? What? I am Verity Price, the 2021 World Champion of Public Speaking. I'm an accredited speaker, and my passion is helping people find their voice, tell their story, and present with power. And I'm always looking in my life as a speaker coach, as a facilitator who teaches presenting skills, for lessons on how we can keep improving our presenting. And I learned an amazing one the other day. I was working with 60 presenters over a 2-day course. They were presenting short speeches, getting feedback. I was teaching them the fundamentals of speaking. And in the lunch break on the second day, a young man came up to me. He looked very disappointed. He said, "Verity, that wasn't the speech I wanted to give. I had these amazing phrases I wanted to say and I forgot." And I'm sure you know that's very disappointing as a speaker when you don't give the speech you were wanting to give. So I asked him the obvious question. Well, how many times did you practice your speech? And he said, "Oh no, I didn't practice. I wrote it and I thought it through in my head and basically hoped for the best." So I said, "Well, that's your problem right there. If you want to give the speech you want to give, you have to practice it. You're still not going to give the exact speech you want. Things change on stage, but you have to practice. And that way you will guarantee putting in those phrases and those special moments you've prepared." And while I was talking, another girl leaned over and said, "Oh, no, no, no. In our organization, we've been asked not to over practice because we want to be authentic. We want to flow in the moment. We don't want to look over rehearsed. And we've actually been dissuaded. Our leader doesn't speak like that. He speaks from the heart. It works every time. So we're encouraged to speak like that." So I was a little bit thrown because I don't want to argue with their culture of how their company works. But I also am. I like to think of myself as someone who knows a little bit about speaking. So I was like, how do I get around this being told not to practice? Especially if you're wanting to get your message across. And on the way back up to the session, I suddenly remembered rugby. Because we had just had the World Cup in South Africa. I'd been watching all the games with my husband. And even though I don't understand the rules, he'd explain things as we went. And I remembered a moment when South Africa was down. They were losing, I think, against Ireland. And it was high tension. We were all sitting there and suddenly something started happening on the field. And Greg, my husband, went, "Oh, they're doing a set play. They're doing a set play." I was like, "What's a set play?" Because I don't understand the rules. And he said, "Oh no, these are pieces of play that the team practices incessantly with their coach in training, so that at a moment like this, when the score is down and they're trying to advance, they're trying to score a point, they go to a set play that they all know what they're doing, and hopefully it works out for them." And it did. We scored. And so as the World Cup continued, I knew what a set play was, and I could see the value that all that practice in a very spontaneous rugby game could give a team. And so it hit me. This was how I could share with the delegates about the importance of having set pieces of content that as a speaker you have practiced, so that when you get to that piece of content, you're going to deliver it the way you want to deliver. The rest of your speech can be spontaneous. It can be in the moment. It doesn't have to be word for word. In fact, audiences don't enjoy word for word speeches. But this is when speaking and rugby becomes similar. Practice your introduction. Know how you're starting. Then move through your content. Know how you're finishing. You want to practice your conclusion. But if you have stories or anecdotes or little scenarios that you're painting and you want to paint them well, practice those. Your whole speech doesn't have to be a word for word memorized speech. But having those set pieces of content that you can draw in the moment, in a meeting, you say, "That reminds me," and you know that content, you can speak about it with authority. That's when being practiced and being prepared makes a difference. Luckily for me, they all got it. They completely understood that they could still be authentic, they could still be spontaneous, but it helps to practice. So if you are wanting to take your speaking to the next level, look at where you can have set plays, set pieces of content that you can draw on throughout a presentation so that you really get your point across the line, so that you score. And that, my friends, is how public speaking is like rugby. If you enjoy my content, Please subscribe, please follow me, hit like so the algorithm pushes me up, more people see what I'm sharing. I look forward to continuing to share with you tips and tricks on how you can present with power.